Valentine's Day is just a couple days away, so today we're making 3 heart-shaped breakfast and brunch ideas to make for the ones you love. Hi there foodie friends, my name is Carly and welcome back to my channel Adventures in Yum. First up, we're making heart-shaped mini cinnamon rolls. While you could simply take store-bought cinnamon rolls and shape them into hearts before baking, we're throwing together a quick dough using 6 cups or 840 grams of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 2 cups or about 490 grams of sourdough starter discard, and 1.5 cups or about 354 milliliters of whole milk. This recipe makes 2 pans of small cinnamon rolls, but it can easily be cut in half to make just 1 pan. Once we mix everything together into one cohesive ball of dough, we set that aside while we work on our filling. To 1 stick or half a cup or 110 grams of melted unsalted butter, we add 3/4 cup or 150 grams of brown sugar, 1/4 cup or 50 grams of granulated sugar, and 2.5 tablespoons of ground cinnamon. Once we thoroughly mix that together, we set it aside while we roll out our dough. Next, we flour our work surface, shape our dough into kind of a long rectangle, and then place it on our floured surface. After sprinkling some flour on top, we roll the dough into a large flat rectangle about 1/4 inch thick and about 30 inches or 76 centimeters long and about 11 to 12 inches or 28 to 30 centimeters wide. It's okay if it's not a perfect rectangle because we can use a knife to trim some of the excess pieces and then add them to other parts of the rectangle. Next, we're adding our cinnamon mixture for the filling. If it's a cold day and the mixture cools and thickens while rolling out the dough, you can remelt the mixture in the microwave for about 15 to 30 seconds. A thinner consistency will make it much easier to spread. Once our filling is in a nice thin layer across the whole surface of the dough, we use our chef's knife to lightly draw a line lengthwise to show where the middle is. We then take one end and roll the dough into a long log, but we stop at that center point. As a side note, I like to use a pastry or even silicone brush to brush off excess flour as I roll the dough. We then take the other side and roll it toward the center like we just did with the opposite side. We're going to cut these into about 30 pieces, so we use our chef's knife to make little marks on the top of the dough to know where to cut the pieces. We're then using original or unflavored floss to wrap around the dough at each marked section and pull the floss so that it cuts the dough. We spray 2 9x13 glass pans with non-stick cooking spray, and as we add our cinnamon rolls, we shape them into hearts by pinching the center point so that it creates that pointed bottom of the heart. If your hearts don't seem to want to stay together, I dabbed my finger in a little tiny bit of water and brushed it in the center to get them to stick a little bit better. Once you arrange them how we want, we're pouring half and half over the top. I decided to test out one pan with half a cup or about 137 milliliters of half and half, while the other one I tested only had 1/4 cup or about 68 milliliters. After seeing them baked, the smaller size cinnamon rolls like the ones we're making here are better with the lesser amount of half and half, while if we were to make large cinnamon rolls and bake them all in just one pan, then the half a cup or 137 milliliters would work better. I've wanted to try this tip from Allie of Sugar Pusher for a while because it helps make the cinnamon rolls more gooey. We're then baking these at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 204 degrees Celsius for about 25 to 30 minutes. I covered mine with foil, but I realized that was a mistake because they didn't brown like they usually do, so don't do that. I'm still learning how to perfect my cinnamon roll technique as I make more of them. While the cinnamon rolls bake, we prepared the delicious cream cheese frosting. We start with 8 ounces or 224 grams of room temperature cream cheese, and then add 1 stick or half a cup or 110 grams of unsalted butter. We use a fork to mash the two together until well combined, and then we add 2 cups or about 260 grams of powdered sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Mix that until it starts to have a thinner consistency, swap to a whisk, and then mix until completely smooth. Then we're dividing this into 3 bowls and adding red food gel color to one bowl, pink to the second, and purple to the third. This is completely optional. You can definitely keep these plain, but I simply wanted to make them a little bit more fun for Valentine's Day. When the cinnamon rolls are ready, we're going to let them cool for about 5 to 10 minutes before adding our cream cheese frosting. A tip I learned during this process is that you're probably going to want to take a knife and cut around each of the hearts before adding the frosting, because this will make them much easier to remove from the pan. If you add the frosting and then try to cut them like I did, it's harder to figure out where each heart is, so you might accidentally cut a piece off of another heart without even realizing it. We're adding our cream cheese frosting in little dollops around the pan and then carefully using a spoon to spread the cream cheese and give it a nice marbled effect with those 3 colors. And there we have our super cute heart-shaped cinnamon rolls. Aren't the colors of the frosting so cool? Second, we're making some awesome mini strawberry and chocolate chip heart scones. First, to a large mixing bowl, we're adding 2.5 cups or 350 grams of all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup or 150 grams of granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. We give this a quick mix and set it aside for now. I actually decided to make a double batch here, but all measurements I'm providing are for a single batch of mini scones. Next, we add 1 stick or half a cup or 110 grams of little cold or frozen unsalted butter pieces into the dry ingredients and gently toss it around to make sure that all the butter gets coated in the flour mixture. Break apart any large butter pieces with your fingers so that the butter is more evenly dispersed. I usually grate my butter, but this time I decided to just try cutting my butter into little cubes. And while I prefer grating my butter a little bit more, if you want to skip that step, they're still going to turn out pretty darn tasty. After you're done mixing that around, place the mixture into the freezer for at least 10 minutes to ensure that the butter remains very cold. After removing the bowl from the freezer, add 1.5 cups or 355 milliliters of cold sourdough starter discard and mix until the dough just starts to come together. Instead of sourdough starter discard, you can certainly use about 1 cup or 237 milliliters of cold buttermilk. Next, we add 10 ounces or 280 grams of mini dark or semi-sweet chocolate chips and mix that together until just combined. We then lightly flour the work surface and add the dough. We can use a rolling pin or even just our hands to flatten the dough into a large rectangle about 1/2 to 1 inch or about 1¼ to 2.5 centimeters in thickness. We now use a small heart-shaped cookie cutter to cut them and then place them on a parchment paper lined baking sheet. Once we cut all of our hearts, we re-roll the dough scraps and then continue to cut the rest of that into hearts. We're then baking each tray at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 204 degrees Celsius for approximately 12 to 14 minutes. Once they've come out of the oven, leave them on the baking sheet to cool for at least 10 minutes. For these ones, I just decided to let them completely cool before adding the frosting. To make the strawberry frosting for the top, to a bowl we add 1 cup or 130 grams of powdered sugar, 1/4 cup or about 24 grams of freeze-dried strawberry powder, and about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We give that a quick whisk and then we add 1 tablespoon of heavy cream at a time until we reach a desired consistency that's thin but not too runny. I used about 7 tablespoons, which is just under half a cup of heavy cream. For an added boost of flavor, I also decided to add 1 teaspoon of strawberry extract. This is more of a frosting consistency than a glaze, but I think that it's mainly because of the strawberry powder. Either way, it's yummy. Once our frosting is done, we can either use a spoon to spread some on top of the scones, or because it's a slightly thicker consistency, my personal favorite way is to add it to a piping bag and pipe it into a heart shape across the top. Enjoy these as is or pop them in the microwave for about 15 to 30 seconds to make the chocolate chips and frosting a little melty and oh so good. I love making scones because they are so easy to throw together and it's actually really fun coming up with scrumptious flavor combos. Are you excited to try these ones? Before we make the third and final item for our Valentine's brunch and breakfast ideas, if you're getting value out of this video, then please make sure to hit that like button, click subscribe, and ring that bell to be notified about my latest video. Last but certainly not least, we're making brioche French toast hearts. However, this is not just any French toast. This is French toast with a cinnamon roll twist. After seeing a loaf of brioche bread at the store, I immediately knew I wanted to make something with it. We start by using a cookie cutter to cut hearts out of the centers of our brioche pieces. We then make a quick custard base by mixing 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. We set that aside for now while we add 3 whole eggs, 1/4 cup or about 60 milliliters of heavy whipping cream, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract into a separate bowl. After giving that a quick whisk, we add the cinnamon and sugar mixture and whisk until well combined. I actually ended up having to make another batch of custard for the 6 hearts and bread scraps I made, so keep that in mind if you're making a bunch of French toast. Next, we spray a little bit of non-stick cooking spray into our pan and add a little chunk of butter. We place our brioche into the custard mixture, making sure that it gets thoroughly soaked, shake off the excess, and then immediately place it in the pan after the butter has melted. Cook that for a few minutes until brown on one side, flip it, cook it for a few more minutes until nicely browned on the other side, remove it from the pan, carefully wipe away the excess spray and butter, and then repeat with each of your French toast hearts and the excess scrap pieces. In between cooking all of the hearts, we're whipping up some cream cheese frosting, exactly like the cream cheese frosting we whipped up earlier in this video, but this time we're only making half a batch of that frosting. Once all of our French toast is complete, to plate these, we put one heart down, spread a little of the cream cheese frosting on top, and then lay the next heart so that it overlaps the bottom one. We add a little cream cheese frosting and then repeat one more time. To finish these off, we're adding a little bit of Valentine sprinkles. Here I decided to use red sugar sprinkles and some tiny heart sprinkles. And that's how we make our brioche French toast hearts with a cinnamon roll twist. The brioche bread and custard make this rich and delicious, while the cinnamon and cream cheese frosting add those yummy cinnamon roll flavors. What's your favorite in today's video? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you gave these a try because they're all so delicious. Let me know which one you try and how you enjoy it in the comments below. If you're interested in checking out some of the products I used in this video, then please make sure to check out the video description below for some of their Amazon links. Thank you so much for joining me today, foodie friends. I'll see you next time for another yummy adventure. Cheers!